Good morning. Anybody cold? Sorry, I had to. Craziest thing. I don't know what happened, but between Thursday and today, all of the air conditioning systems that operate this room sounds like they got hit by a power surge, and they don't work, obviously. So Kyle in the first service, he was like, hey, do you want us to open these side doors? It's 64 degrees out. We can let it breeze through. It'll be nice and comfortable. I'm like, we need to suffer, first of all. As if suffering for us is not having air conditioning in our church service. I don't know what kind of suffering we think that is. There's obviously other things that are happening elsewhere. But anyways, sorry about the heat, but it might be my fault because today I'm going to talk about the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. So I don't know, maybe there's something more than what's going on that we can see. So I'm excited about sharing with you. My name's Cody Sikes. I'm the campus pastor of New Life Church Midland. Just excited about what God is doing. We have a church, if you're new to us, we have a church in Lubbock as well. We have a vision to plant 7 churches. With the addition, we actually have a church that's in the process, if you will. We moved them over to Ireland, to Dublin. There's a church that's going to happen in Dublin. So we have Midland, we have Lubbock. There's a couple that is moving to Amarillo. Kyle and Sarah, as we have announced, they'll be going to Odessa. Next year, we'll have an Odessa campus. Abilene, Wichita Falls, and Roswell, New Mexico are coming at some point in time or another. Someone was asking us, so what's the timeline? We don't necessarily have a timeline because what we're really trying to do is we want to make sure that we have the right people before we do the thing, right? If you have the right people, you can go way further. And so we're just, we've got people that are coming up, people that are growing, people that are moving and shaking. And so God is doing some awesome and radical things at New Life Church. Just kind of wanted to give you a snapshot of what you walked into if you're actually visiting today. In fact, if you're a first-time visitor, we want to tell you welcome. Church family, would you welcome anybody that's in the room for the first time? Say thank you for joining us. Hope that you've been blessed. I wanted to also just remind you, we made this announcement several weeks back. Pastor Braden did. But we are March 30th. March 30th, we're going to 3 services. As you can see, as you can feel, this room is getting very, very overcrowded. We actually had we've witnessed this happen several different times where people actually go and check their kids into service, walk into this room, see that there's no room for them, and then turn around, get their kids, and leave. And we actually just don't want people to be turned away from the church. We actually want to do our best to actually facilitate and host them. And so that's why we're going to 3 services. It'll be 8:15. 10 a.m. and 11:45. And so I would ask this of you, if you would call yourself a regular attendee of New Life Church and you regularly attend the 11 a.m. service, I would ask you to not go to the 10 a.m., but stay in the 11:45, or even if you're feeling extra faithful, jump all the way into the 8:15 service. We would love to have you just to make room for people that might be coming in, because God is moving, God is shaking. There's some really, really cool things that are happening. In fact, we've got such a diverse group of people that are coming to our church. There are people that come to our church that don't understand English. They actually speak Spanish, which is amazing. And so what we've actually started, there's someone right now in another space in this building that is translating everything that I'm saying in practice. It's really, really cool. So we've done this. This is the second week that this is going on. They're only translating to the rest of the team that is on the Spanish translation team. So that's why we haven't offered this publicly yet, but they're practicing right now. And we're learning as communicators to slow down a little bit. They're learning all the different nuances of what it is to hear in English, but translate in Spanish. It's actually incredible. It's going really well. That Spanish translation piece is actually going to launch publicly on March 30th as well. And so basically what's going to end up happening is you're going to be able to, or you or a loved one would be able to simply get on our guest Wi-Fi network, download an app that will be able to teach you. It's really simple. Download an app. You can bring your own earphones, pop them in, and as soon as the message starts, you're actually getting it translated in Spanish. It's amazing. It's really, really cool. God is moving. God is shaking. I'm telling you all of these things because we are all a part of this. Your faith, your prayer, your finances, your dedication to the local church, it's actually paving a way for us to be able to do a lot more than what we've just experienced, and it's just amazing. And so I just want to tell you thank you. Honestly, from a pastor's heart, like, thank you so much for partnering with us, for being faithful, for loving on each other and showing up. And so just a few things that are awesome. There's a lot of really, really cool life things that are happening. You come to a really life-filled church. Amen? I'm not saying that because I pastor it. I'm saying it because I get to go to it too. It's awesome. If you have a Bible, you can go ahead and open it to Daniel chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, just to kind of catch you up before we read it. Up to this moment in Daniel chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar has had this dream. And he has this dream and he doesn't understand the interpretation. He doesn't know what this dream means. And so he goes to his sorcerers, his magicians, his soothsayers, his people. And he's like, I had this dream, but what I need someone to tell me what my dream was, and then I need someone to interpret my dream. And if you don't, I'm gonna cut you into pieces. He actually said this. I'm gonna cut you into pieces, and I'm gonna burn your house into ashes. And they're like, King, this is impossible. No one can just walk up to you and say, hey, the dream that you had last night was this, and this is the interpretation of it. They're like, this is actually impossible. It makes the king so mad that he just sends out a decree into the land to actually have all of the wise men completely slaughtered. Like, this is high-stake dream interpretation right now. Like, we have dreams. How many have dreams? Could you imagine if you went to someone, you're like, hey, tell me my dream last night. And if you don't, I'm going to cut you into pieces, and I'm going to burn your house down. Like, it's absolutely insane. So, one of the commanders of the king's army, they find Daniel, and they're like, this is what's going on. Daniel has the wherewithal to say, why is the king doing what he's doing? This man tells Daniel what's going on, and Daniel's like, hey, if you'll just give me some time, I believe that I'll come into understanding what the dream was and what the interpretation is, which is really, really a very marking moment, a very powerful moment in Daniel's life where he's like, I believe God this much. So he takes this moment and he shares it with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his three friends. They begin to press in faith that Daniel would actually hear from the Holy Spirit, from the power of God, what the king's dream was, and then also get the interpretation. It's amazing. We were talking just a second ago, Brody was just about joining hands in faith. Like, this is a faith moment because his life is on the line. If he can't tell the king the dream or the interpretation, he's also getting cut to pieces and his house is also going to become ashes. And what does he do? He goes and he leans upon his people. What would it look like for you to lean upon your people that you know are actually going to go to the Lord for you? That's what Daniel does. And it gets us all the way into this moment where he gets the dream right, he gets the interpretation right, the king is very pleased, he elevates Daniel, promotes him, but Daniel's like, listen, he petitions the king in such a way that he wants also promotion to come for the people that were with him. I think that's another picture of the beauty of the body. It's like, when I advance, so do you get to advance. And when you advance, I hope that I get to advance as well because we're linked together in this in a different way. And so all of those things can get us all the way into what we're going to read in Daniel chapter 3. You with me? Verses 12 through 27 is what I'm going to read. It says, this is when the king gets report of a moment where he sends out a decree also that everyone's got to serve and worship this golden image. And he gets report that a couple of people aren't doing this. So he says, there are certain Jews whom you have set over affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and in fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now if you are ready at the time that you hear the sound of the horn and the flute and the harp and the lyre and the psaltery and symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king. It's like they're doubling down. It's like they're just twisting it in his back. O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he spoke and commanded that they heat up the furnace 7 times more than it usually is heated. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, in their trousers, in their turbans, and in their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down into the midst of the burning furnace. Then the king, Nebuchadnezzar, was astonished, and he rose in haste and he spoke, saying to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and he spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire. And the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors gathered together, and they saw these men whose bodies the fire had no power. Their hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of the fire was not on them. What a powerful, amazing set of scriptures. The Bible is full of just wild stuff. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. I want to talk through what we just read a little bit, and I actually just kind of want to lean into what does this have for us today. And so I'm going to pray, and then we're going to chat about this. Father, I thank you for everything that is happening in the hearts of people in this room. Even as we hear your word and the radical stories of your salvation, the radical stories of you coming in and changing everything, it stirs us in a way of anticipation, knowing that you are the God that is not a God that is a respecter of persons, but a God that can do it again. And so we just release our faith right now for again. I thank you, Holy Spirit, for leading me in this moment of sharing, and that you would lead all of us as hearers, that we would become not just hearers, but doers of your word. We thank you for helping us. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. How many of you have ever found yourself in a moment where you needed to be rescued? Anybody ever needed to be rescued? Was it overly dramatic rescue? Like it really wasn't that bad? It's like the moment of like you're at an office party and you get stuck in the corner talking to that one guy, but you're not talking, he's talking. And he doesn't take breaks in between the things that he says. And you're like, I don't care about UFOs. I don't even care about aliens. Could you take a break so I could exit? I need rescuing. Please, somebody rescue me in this moment. We've all been in moments of rescue, and it's funny how we determine what rescue should look like. But I shared this story, and I've only shared this one time in church before, and for whatever reason, I was preparing, and I felt like it came up in me again to share, and I think it fits the moment. But obviously, in 2005, you would know if you've been here for some time, and I've shared this, but I got radically saved. God transformed my life in a very, very significant way. I went from just a really dark way of living into just an incredible amount of light. stopped drinking completely for a very long period of time, 7 years, no alcohol whatsoever. It was something that was just normal to me up to this point in my life. Like God just radically changed me. But I think sometimes we have this expectation that and for the most part it does happen, but it's like, well, I got saved and now all the things that I have done should never touch me again. Most of the time that's true, but in 2006, it wasn't true for me. I was driving to work, I get to work, I pull into the office parking lot, and right behind me comes an unmarked police car. And I'm like, well, I'm saved, so no, they're not here for me. And they were there for me. They had found that I had written a $14.86 hot check at 2 years before, and they were coming to arrest me. I'm like, but I'm saved. Like, I'm sure I got a card in here somewhere that shows that I'm saved. Like, I got a cross in my pocket, a penny that's got a cross stamped in it. Like, something's gonna tell you there's a fish sticker on the back of my truck now. Like, I don't go to places like that anymore because I'm saved. And they were like, sorry about your bad luck. Today you do. So I go to jail. And yes, the Lord still loved me. If you've been to jail, yes, the Lord still loves you. I go to jail. It was a really interesting situation. I was in there I was in this, I don't know, I called it a drunk tank, maybe. I figured that's where they throw all the drunk people, but I wasn't drunk because I was saved. And so I get in there, and I'm in there for 10 hours. And it was just like this worst thing. I'm like, this is brutal. So 7 o'clock, they come around like they're gonna move me from this place into where everybody else is, the unsaved people. Just kidding, please don't write me any emails saying all the things, just kidding. So I have to take the shower, I have to change the clothes, I'm in the sandals that don't fit because they're too big, and all these different things. Like, this is not where I'm supposed to be right now. I'm supposed to be at work because I have changed my life and I'm responsible. And so I go in, and they give you all your stuff. They give you a razor with no shaving cream. I'm like, I don't know what my baby face is gonna do with that. I didn't have a beard at the time. It was just like, what is happening in my life right now? And so the greatest thing happened in this moment. I have all my stuff. It's like the movies, like the door, like the giant door, like it opens, and like I step in and it's like bigger than I expected, and it's darker than I expected, and there's like all these guys in there, and there's a picnic table in the middle of the room, and all of a sudden, as the door opens, everyone looks at me, and I'm like, I'm the only person in the moment that doesn't look like I belong in the room. I'm tiny, I'm baby-faced, I'm saved. They didn't know that. But all of a sudden, my fear gets turned into something way different, because the biggest and meanest and scariest looking dude in the whole place stands up, towering over everyone, and he's like, hey, what's up, man? I remember you. And he's like, you remember me? And I'm like, yes, I remember you, my boy from over there. I remember you. I've never seen this guy. I don't even know if he was a real person. He might have been an angel. But I was so happy to see someone that I did not know in this very moment. All of a sudden, in the midst of all of these people, the guy that doesn't look like he belongs in the room, all of a sudden, I belong in the room. I'm like, change the way I'm walking. I'm like, shoot, man. I know you. And you know me. Everybody see this. This guy, he knows me. Look at me. Say something. This guy said something to me. It was all of a sudden, in this moment, my anxiety changed, and I had a new lens for my entire experience in jail for 24 hours. It was uncomfortable because I was in a small cell with 6 other guys. One was on strike. He wasn't taking showers. He smelled not like what you want someone to smell like that you have to sleep next to. It was quite interesting, but one person's recognition of me and his stature, it changed my perspective of the whole situation. And what we read in Daniel chapter 3 is that one man's stature in the midst of a fiery furnace changed everything about the situation. And his form was that of the Son of God. My intention this morning is to help us understand that there are ways in which we expect God to save us or to rescue us from situations. And oftentimes our expectation of what it is that God should do in order to rescue us is for him to pick us up and move us out of a situation or remove circumstances from our life. And if he doesn't do that in the way that we expect, does our perception of him change? Or does our perception of ourselves actually change? In Daniel chapter 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they make this statement straight to the king's face, and it's an incredible one. O king, we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. This enrages the king, as we read, and he demands that this furnace be turned up 7 times hotter than normal. He is basically going to make a massive example out of them because you don't do this to the king. The situation is dire. There's no escape. And as it goes forth, it says that the king is absolutely astonished in one moment because he asks the people, did we not throw 3 into the fire? Yes, we did, O king. So why do I see 4, all of them being loose, and 1 looking like Jesus, the Son of God? It's interesting that even the language is used there for I see 4 men loose. Not 3 that were bound, but 4 that were loose. And my thought was this: could it be that could it be that in the fire, Jesus doesn't instantly remove you from the fire, but he looses the things that restrict your thinking and your vision and your ability to hear and your hope? What if he looses the chains that keep you bound in the midst of your fire, so that while you're standing in fire and while you're standing in persecution, you realize that I'm not bound because Jesus is with me? It was the first thing that happened. Rescue in this moment, and I think that we could judge God based on this. We could say things like, well, if he was really a redeeming and rescuing God, then why didn't he just completely remove them from the fire instantly? And my question is this: were they saved from the fire after they were pulled completely out of the fire? No. They were saved from the harm of the fire because of who showed up in the fire with them. Oftentimes we're in this position where it's like, if he doesn't remove this from me or remove me from this, he hasn't actually rescued me. I propose to you that Jesus is with you far more than you can see. I believe that he is for you more than you actually ask him to be. I think that we relate to God in a really interesting way. We relate to God like we often relate to the world around us. We try to bring God down to our way of thinking. You think about parenting. You think about the way that we raise our parents. Our kids. As a parent, if I'm not careful, helping my children will always look like me removing something from them or removing them from a situation. But I'm not designed to be a fixer as a parent. I'm designed to be a trainer of children. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, it says, train up a child in the way that they should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. I think oftentimes because we always are trying to fix things in the way in which we do it, we expect God to do the same for us in the way that we do it. Come quickly and come in the way in which I want you to come right now. And if you don't, my lens in which I see the situation will tell me a couple of things. God is not as good as he says that he is. If he doesn't rescue me on time, there's something wrong with me, or God is not faithful. Your lenses and the way in which you look at your situation, they're always going to tell you something. Most of the time it's not the truth, but it's always going to be something that gets you to try to question God. If he isn't fixing the problem on our terms, we automatically think that he has left us. Maybe I'm alone in that, but that's impossible. Hebrews chapter 13 tells us that God said, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. It's amazing. In verse 27, of Daniel chapter 3, it says that the fire had no power over them. They were standing in a fire. First, they were laying in the fire because they were bound. They're standing in the fire. It said that the fire that was 7 times hotter than normal, it had no effect on them. It said that it didn't even singe their hair. Their clothes didn't even get consumed. They didn't even smell like a fire. Can I tell you this, that whether you are in a fire right now in your life or you are outside of the fire in your life, the best place that you can possibly be is realizing that Jesus is actually with you in either place. It's the safest place that you can be. If you are in a fire right now, I'm going to pray in just a minute that you have vision to see that Jesus is actually with you. In the moment that you realize and that becomes your new reality, you'll find yourself believing that you're in the very safest place that you can possibly be. But it's only when you actually can allow yourself to believe that Jesus is so good that he will be with you in the middle, not only with you when he rescues you the way that you want to be rescued. The expectation should be that when we're hidden in Christ, we come out of trials that life throws at us more convinced of his faithfulness than less. I think it's interesting that also the statement that they made to the king was, we're not going to bow down to your image. We're not going to bow down to serve and worship the God that you want us to serve or the God that you serve. And even if you throw us into the fire, we still won't, because we believe that our God, he'll deliver us. I think sometimes we get in these moments and we get in these situations and we get thrown into fire. And once we're thrown into the fire, then we start believing for Jesus to come and rescue us. They didn't do that. They had settled it within themselves. Their vision and their sight was set. Their lenses were set on Jesus long before they were ever tossed in. They were ready in season. They were ready out of season. They were like my granddad used to say all the time. He said, I'm like pressed ham. I stay ready. I'm like, I don't know what pressed ham is, but I'm going to say that because you said it, Papa. They were ready. They were resolved in themselves of, even if this happens, our God will rescue us. And their faith in Jesus having the ability to rescue them is the reason that Jesus manifested himself in the fire in the form of the Son of God. And they didn't get affected by the fire like we or the king even thought that they might. I believe that we have a challenge or an issue, and I believe that the issue is this, that we set our eyes on the problem, and a lack of faith paired with wrong lenses, they have built up our problems to be bigger than our God. You might be dealing with something in your body, your flesh, and it may make you feel a certain way, your soul. But can I tell you, you live in a body, you have a soul, but you are a spirit. And if you're a born-again child of God, it says that in Colossians 3, that your real life is hidden with Christ in God. That means that you might feel this and you might be affected in this way, but ultimately your spirit is supreme. And you have to war, the weapons of our warfare, they're not carnal, but they're mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds. We have to war from the place of knowing that we are victorious because he was victorious. When you're in the middle of a fire, you have to remind yourself, oh, no. I am the head and I am not the tail. I am above only, but I am not beneath. It's 7 times hotter. I am blessed going out and I am blessed when I come back in. If he was for me here, he is for me there. You have to start reminding yourself of what the word says about you. And all of a sudden, it starts changing the way that you see the situation so that you settle on the reality that is spiritual. And the spiritual reality is for us that are new, born again believers, is that we win every single time. Losing is not an option in Jesus because he left nothing undone on the cross. In 2 Kings chapter 6, there's a moment when there's an enemy king. I'm going to break it down really simple. There's an enemy king that's going to attack God's people. And it says that the prophet Elisha knows the king's battle plan that he talks about in his bedroom. And the prophet, having heard this by the Spirit of God, takes it to the king that is over God's people, and he gives him the whole breakdown. This is how this king is going to attack you. All of a sudden, the enemy king finds out that the prophet Elisha has given away his battle plan. And he's enraged towards Elisha. So Elisha and his servant, they're working together, and all of a sudden, it's nighttime. Elisha's servant, he wakes up and he realizes that the enemy king has sent horses and chariots, and they have surrounded the place where they were at. And he runs to Elisha, his prophet, his master in this moment. He runs to Elisha, and in a panic, he begins to tell what is about to happen. He's like, this doesn't look good. There's a ton of enemy around us. It looks like they're gonna consume us. And Elisha says, oh, there are more for us than there are against us. Elisha could see in spirit what his servant couldn't see in the natural. And in the natural, we see how many things are stacked against us, but in the spirit, we need to see that there are more for us than there are against us. Elisha prays this for his servant. Father, I pray that you would open his eyes that he may see. And when the servant's eyes were opened, he saw the chariots and the horses of fire, the armies of God that were surrounding. That's the type of place that we have to move into. That's the type of place that we have to move into, especially if we're in this moment of feeling like I am in the middle of a fire. I am in the middle of a divorce. I am in the middle of thinking about getting a divorce. I am in the middle of a bad business deal. I am in the middle of something going on with my kids. I am in the middle of something going on with my health. I am in the middle of, it feels like the walls are caving in. And if the walls feel like they're caving in, I want you to stop and I want you to say, God, will you just open my eyes that I may see? That there are more for me than there are against me. 1,000 may fall at my right hand and 1,000 at my hand and 10,000 at my right hand, but it shall not come near me. Only with my eyes while I look to see the reward of the wicked. Lord, I'm just going to trust you. I refuse to see my life through a lens of fear, and I'm asking that scales would fall off my eyes and I would begin to see in faith. Lord, would you change our lenses this morning? Would you shift the way that we see our situation? That's the place that we've got to move into. Some of you feel like it's time to quit. It's not time to quit. There's a thing that we have to continue to develop, and it is resolve and it is grit. When it gets hard, when it gets hot in a room and it gets uncomfortable, so be it. If the presence is here, why would we ever leave? I don't care how warm it gets in the room, and if it just becomes a sweat fest in the room. If Jesus is here, why would we ever want to leave? And if in my life, if I'm in the middle of something that is burning to the ground, but I know that Jesus is with me in it, why would I ever leave the place that Jesus is at? Let it all burn down. If I have him, I have everything. If we only, with our children, rescue them and don't let them feel the effects of certain things, do they ever grow in wisdom? No. They're always only ever rescued and they become weak. Really, really kind and fatherly. I remember when my children were having night terrors over and over and over and over and over again. I remember when Bryden, my son, happened with my oldest. I remember what happened with Presley, but it happened in Bryden. It was more intense. And I remember there were moments where he would come into my room and he was just deathly afraid to be in his room. God, he's like, Dad, there's just something in there. I can't go to sleep. He's just crying hysterically. And I would go in his room and I would hold him and we would worship and I would pray until he would go to sleep. And it would happen night after night after night after night for, it seemed like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And he was about 8 years old, and then he comes into my room one night, and it's the same situation. I've done everything that I knew how to do. I stood in the fire with him, if you will. I trained him. I taught him what worship was a weapon, that he could overcome this. If he pressed in praise, that God would saturate his praise, that he would inhabit his praise, and that God would bring peace in the moment. I taught him everything that I knew in this time of what felt like the fire was burning hotter, 7 times worse. And then he came to me, and he was in this place again, and this is just this over and over thing. And I was like, listen, like, I know this is going to be really unpopular, but I picked him up. I didn't tell him that because he wouldn't understand unpopular. I picked him up. I took him in his room. I took him back into the fire. I set him on his bed. He's crying. You're like, this is abuse. I'll let God judge that. I set him on his bed. He's crying hysterically. He doesn't want to be in there. And I said, buddy, I've given you the weapon. I've taught you everything that I know how to teach you. You have to fight this on your own. I can't rescue you any longer. I've given you everything, and you have it in you to fight this. And I shut the door and left him in there, crying and afraid. And I went back a little bit later, and he was sound asleep. Fast forward several months, and we're driving home from church, and I would encourage you, when your kids say random things, pay attention, because I think that there are windows. They are opening a window into their soul for us to actually climb through and partner with them. Make sure that we don't miss those windows and they close them, because sometimes when they close them, they don't open them for a while. He's in the back of the car, in the back of the truck, and he's like, Dad, you know what I say to fear? I'm like, no, I actually don't know what you say to fear. I didn't know what you talk to fear. He's like, I just tell fear when it comes, like, I didn't get baptized to start a relationship with you. I got baptized to start a relationship with Jesus, and you can leave. It is awesome. But I believe that happened because I didn't rescue him that last time. He knew that I was with him. He knew that I had given him everything that I knew how to give him, and he actually came out with his own ability and his own wisdom in God to actually fight the enemy and the enemy flee. I believe that we can't live any longer from the place of Jesus, will you relieve my pressure? Jesus, will you get me out of this situation? Jesus, will you remove this from me? What if we actually stepped into fortitude and said, Jesus, if you're with me, I'll stay as long as I need to stay, because I believe that every single moment that I'm in here, you're protecting me, but I'm getting wisdom that I'm going to pass on to generation after generation after generation, because you won't be the last one that's going through the fire that you're going through. Your children may. How much better would it be if we could say, hey, follow me as I follow Jesus, and this is what he did for me in the middle of my fire. I just believe it's not the time to quit. Some of you are on the verge of quitting. Maybe you're in a bad business deal. Maybe you have a terrible business partner. I believe that Jesus wants to turn it around. Maybe you're like, this is what I get, this is what I did, this is the bad decision I made, and you've literally been nailing yourself over and over and over because of a bad decision that you made. If you'll just give it to God, he could change you and it could change them. I don't think it's the time to quit. Now, if you're in a situation that is extremely abusive, don't sign up for abuse. But also don't cry wolf. Use wisdom. Have a clean conscience. But if you're in the middle of something and you're like, I'm on the verge of quitting because it's hard, just get tougher. As kindly as I can tell you, just get tougher. I remember there was a long, long history that I had with sin. I had broken the majority of all of it except for one piece that seemed to be the very hardest. I knew the scriptures to pray. I knew the songs to sing. I prayed those scriptures and I prayed those prayers and I sang those songs in the middle of it. And then all of a sudden it was like if God said, hey, when are you going to stop being so weak-minded? And something happened on the inside of me that caused me to be like, you know what? I actually do have fortitude. And I actually can stand in the middle of this. And Something happened on the inside and it shifted everything. All of a sudden, the things that I were doing in the spiritual began to make sense in the natural. And there was this massive collision where I just became fortified in such a way that I stepped out of an old way of thinking and into a new way. But can I tell you, the temptation has never left. I stand in that fire all the time. But I just know that I'm not standing in that fire alone. Amen? Some of us feel like we're alone. We're not alone. It's a lie. You're not alone. You're not too far gone. You're not too far moved away. You haven't left God too far. You're not broken enough. You're not sick enough. You're not addicted enough. You are not addicted enough for his love. He wants to be with you in, and he wants to be with you out. It's just not the time to quit. It's not the time to quit on your relationships, on your business, on your marriage, on your parenting. It's the time to press in. I believe that we're on the we're on the cusp of some amazing things. Even in your own lives, you're on the cusp of some amazing things. I think that the testimony that was shared is a snapshot of exactly what we're talking about. I am on the verge of wanting to quit. Don't quit. Okay, I won't quit. And the Lord's like, fantastic. Let me be with you in the fire in this way. Let me send you stuff that you didn't expect to have happen in the mail. I'm not saying that that's everybody's testimony, but I'm saying it could be. In any way, shape, or form that you need it, open the windows of heaven, Lord. Pour out such a blessing that we have room and not enough to receive it. What is it that you need? Just keep standing. Just keep standing. Just keep standing. Amen. Can I pray for you? Would you stand with me?
Thank you so much for watching today. If you need prayer or would like more information, please reach out to us on our website at renewlifechurch.com or find us on social media. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to join us in person at one of our 2 campuses in Midland or Lubbock, Texas. Have a great week, and we hope to see you soon.